All right. Tonight, our guest is an author who lives in the space where desire meets danger, where love is messy and complicated and deeply human. Angel M. Shaw is an indie author of dark, angsty, and I emphasize the angsty part, romance, the creative mind behind the how you pronounce it?
Griot.
Griot. I said it the first time. The Griot Chronicles and the Devils in DC Saga. She's academically rooted in storytelling, holding a BA in English literature and writing with Tulane University and an MA in emerging media communications from the University of Texas at Dallas. So when she says books are her life, she means that literally. Her stories explore obsession, betrayal, trauma, healing, power, and love in ways that are raw and emotional immersive. When she's not crafting emotionally devastating fictional worlds, she's outside chasing sunlight, exploring indie coffee shops fueled by iced coffee, people watching like a professional anthropologist, or attempting to keep her mysterious alive. She lives in the DFW area where with her soulmate Mr. S and her three children. And I am honored to have her here tonight on Black Girl Tired Book Talk. So let's make sure we welcome Miss Angel M. Shaw.
Yay! I'm so excited to be here.
Okay. All right. What made suspense and angst become such a core part of your writing style? Not just what you like, but emotionally. What part of you needed to tell stories that live in tension, uncertainty, and emotional ache?
Yeah. Ooh, I love that question. So, like you mentioned in my bio, I studied English lit and
Mm-hmm.
I've been in books my whole life. But in studying that, it was a whole lot of dead white men that I studied.
Yeah.
And so when I found Black authors, the classics, and I really got to dive into the craft aspect of
Mm-hmm.
it, Black storytelling, I was like, I want to replicate this and emulate this in my own work. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I when I decided to actually sit down and start writing a book, which has been a 12-year journey and also a 1 year journey.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to those stories that I loved, and I wanted to tell very real stories centering Black women. All of my books feature Black women being loved well in various situations,
Mm-hmm.
but also to not shy away from real things that are happening around these characters in their world.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to use it as a way for readers to process, to see themselves, which is very interesting because I'm curious if you want to kind of get into the struggle love talk that sometimes as a black
Oh, it's
romance.
coming. It's coming. It's
Yeah,
coming.
yeah, it's one of those fine line things, right? But I
Yeah.
want for people who are survivors like myself to be able to see themselves in a character and see that character overcoming, to see that character
Mm.
through and find love and have beautiful, beautiful lives on the other side of their happily ever after.
Mm. So, as a black woman writing interracial romance, what what conversations are you consciously engaging with, whether about the desirability politics, the power dynamics, or representation? Do you feel like your work is pushing against stereotypes even when readers may not realize it?
Yes, yes. So that's actually my number one priority whenever I approach a book. Because
Mm-hmm.
I write interracial romance, I also write Black romance. So the
Mm-hmm.
Real Chronicles, like you mentioned earlier, that's Black romance. But my Shadow Play trilogy, the Devils in DC saga, that's interracial. And in my interracial work, there's a couple things that I try to make sure that I really nail. And that is one, not writing a white woman with a tan when I'm writing my Black women. So really making sure that I am leaning into lived experiences that I have with my friends, with my family, and the other thing is that there's gonna be a conversation with the between the MMC and the female main character that talks about race, that talks about status, that at least addresses that elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like it's disingenuous, especially if I'm writing billionaire romance, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole situation in itself that I try to kind of flip on its head.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels disingenuous to not have those conversations, to not
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that there are systemic conditions around this relationship that are present, and we're going to say, okay, that's there, and then let's move forward.
I'm going to continue on my questioning with interracial before I jump into the black romance because you write multifaceted. So I want to make sure I get everything.
Okay.
Do you ever feel pressure being what am I looking for? Do you ever feel pressure with being symbolic, like when you're really when you're really trying to tell honest love stories? How do you protect your creative freedom while still being aware of the cultural weight your work can carry when you write black women and multicultural men?
Hmm. Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. Um, I think what it boils down to for me is I I remember that I'm the architect of these worlds, right?
Hmm.
Like it is fiction, even though I try to make sure that there is an element of realism and that there is an element of I'm not trying to craft a world that doesn't exist while also presenting a world that exists. You
Hmm.
know, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
So, but I try to remind myself at the end of the day that this is a world that I'm trying to show the beauty of between the relationship and with between these characters, but
Hmm.
also knowing that you say the word symbolic, right? Like I'm not trying to make this be, their eyes were watching God. Like I'm not trying
Yeah.
to write this. I know my lane,
Yeah.
but I want to make sure that I am just being as honest as I can be, and
Hmm.
then the rest will come.
Mm. So how do you navigate being authentic when writing across racial dynamics without diluting yeah, without diluting black womanhood or um over explaining it to like for a broader audience?
Mm. So the short answer is that I'm not writing for the broader audience, which makes
Hmm.
which makes a lot of the people in my life a little antsy, as far as like in the writer world. But
Hmm.
I am writing for Black women,
Hmm.
and so I don't feel the pressure to explain Black womanhood to my ideal reader who is a Black woman and who knows these things. Like for instance, in Shadowplay, there's a scene between Veronica and Winter. Winter's the main female main character, and Veronica is braiding her hair, and they're watching a rom com, and because Winter went through some stuff in the in the previous chapter,
Yeah.
so the scene is very culturally nuanced. If somebody were
Hmm.
coming in and looking at it, like I don't know what like the significance of it, but my Black women readers, they do know, and I've
Hmm.
gotten notes from readers who'll be like, I love the relationship between Winter and Veronica, or between in my other books, Yennefer and Shay, because that's the other thing that I really try to do is I also like it's not about just the individual Black woman, but the Black
Hmm.
woman in relationships with other Black women and other Black people, other Black family members, trying to
Hmm.
create that first. So everybody else
Hmm.
has to move around that.
Now let's dive into the black love aspect of your writing. You write interracial, but you also write black romance. So, with that being said, with the stereotypes, even in interracial romance, there is also stereotypes with black romance. And one of those stereotypes is struggle love, and the difference between urban and romance. Not stating that urban is a backdrop compared to making it a stereotype of negativity. How do you, in your writing, make sure those stereotypes are not part of the conversation?
Mm, mm. Ooh, I have so many thoughts on this.
Mm,
One, I'll just start by saying all forms of love are valid.
mm,
All forms of Black love with a Black woman, whether it be with someone outside their race or within their race, I think that all love is beautiful.
mm,
And so, and the other part of it is that I believe that this conversation about struggle love originates from white supremacy
mm.
in the sense that it's not, this is not an argument that is being originated within our Black communities as so much as it's borrowed from stereotypes and language from communities outside of our own.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's one thing that we need to be conscious of is how that implicit bias kind of is brought into the conversation for us to devalue our own work. Because whether it's urban, whether it's, I saw the one post about, this is not Black romance, they're billionaires, that was kind of going around threads. And it's like all forms of Black existence are beautiful and valid. So I don't see it as like one's better than the other. There's existence, right?
Mm.
So yeah, I completely went off on your question.
That's fine. That's fine. I feel like in the in this day and age, you know how they said the past will repeat itself? And I feel like a lot of times black people go into a circle. And when it comes to struggle loves, those are identities that we're teaching other people to say about us because we say it about ourselves. And um a lot of things people back in the day thought was cute. You know, I'm die hard for my man. I'm gonna struggle with him. They thought that was cute. They thought that was becoming of a person in a relationship. So I do think it's so hard for people to break certain cycles,
Yeah,
and this is one of those cycles that that just keeps floating back around every 6 to 7 months. It'll flow around just like urban romance. Oh, urban is too black. Urban is the backdrop. Anyone can live in an urban area, you
right.
know, but because the thought process is, oh, urban, a lot of black people live in the urban neighborhoods. So it has to be a black author. That's not a thing, but we have made it a thing. And
Right.
I just want us to break from them shackles.
Yeah, yeah. And I think part of it is that we need to ask better not better questions, but we need to ask different questions.
Mm,
We need to ask like who benefits from us even having this conversation and going at each other and tearing each other down over it. Because
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said. Like it is a backdrop. It's a subgenre. There are innumerable subgenres all across.
Yeah.
So why can't we have subgenres? Like it doesn't have to just be Black romance and then there's urban romance over here. Like we can have subgenres within the storytelling, just like they do
It,
for others. You
I
know.
think people get lost in the color.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get lost in the talent. They get lost in the color.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. I want to talk about white gays.
Mm.
Interracial romance by black women often gets caught in what I call the white paradox, where the work can be more easily consumed by white audiences while facing skepticism from parts of the black community. Have you ever encountered the tension, and how has it shaped your relationship with your readership?
Mm. Yeah. So I'll start by saying that the IR subgenre has a problem.
Mm,
There is, and this is something I've been having a lot of conversations with other authors that also write interracial romance, and
mm,
it's preconception that many readers have,
mm.
especially Black readers, that if it's IR, it is. Um, I'm trying to think of a TikTok safe way to say this. It's what's the word? The dynamics are so imbalanced that
That it's basically like a slave relationship.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
and it's especially challenging. Thank you for saying the word. It's especially challenging. Hey, Kenya, when you are writing dark romance because
Mm,
power dynamics are inherent to dark romance.
mm.
Now, people, I think one of the brilliant things that people should consider, and Kenya Wright came out with a book. It's a Asian man, white, black woman
Yeah,
called The
bad
Dragon.
guy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But in The Dragon, the female protagonist is the dominant one.
Wait, are you talking about Kenya Wright or Kenya Gorey Bell? They both came
No,
out with.
she's right. Although Kenya Gore Bell, I love every single thing that she writes.
Are
So
you
those,
talking about Dragon? Oh yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Um, and so, but no, the drag like that one, it's the female main character is the dominant one, which is not
Mm-hmm.
something you see very often. Not even just in black or interracial dark romance conditions, but also with like in general the wider dark romance genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or subgenre. So I'll say it like that. That there's this preconception, and there are very prominent authors who have kind of set the tone for the subgenre over the last couple of decades that that maybe didn't combat that stereotype, which for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, right? For whatever reason,
Yeah.
intentionally, unintentionally. And so, one of the things that I find it very important is to write the antithesis of those types of slave narratives, right?
Mm.
I'm trying to make sure that the power is balanced, regardless of who has the most money, regardless of who has the most physical strength, whatever the power is balanced. If not, leaning more towards my black FMCs having a little bit more power in that relationship because my guys, they're simps for their women, right? So
Mm.
um so that's I do feel the pressure, well, not even pressure, responsibility, right? To make sure that I am one not leaning into that dynamic, but also I'm actively combating that dynamic.
You know, I'm gonna ask this next question from the interracial romance part side and then from the black side of it. All right. Um, some black readers uh feel interracial romance undermines black struggle, while others feel it reflects real life and real autonomy. How do you personally hold space for those critiques without allowing them to silence your storytelling?
Mm, mm, yeah, you know, when it comes to those types of critiques, the the thing that I have to remember is, like I was saying before, right? That these are the worlds that I am creating and have created, and to me, when I'm writing, they exist how they exist. Like I'm not necessarily going towards writing a book and saying I want it to be a dark romance with a stalker vibe and I want XYZ subtrope or microtrope,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't approach my writing that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so because my characters kind of come to me and then the story forms around them. And then I go, once the book is done, I'm like, all right, now I gotta figure out how to market this thing. What are the tropes?
Mm-hmm.
I so there's that aspect, but also I think that all critique is valid,
Mm-hmm.
and I definitely take things that, like, if something in my work inadvertently or whatever, the intent doesn't necessarily matter, but if something in my work is causing harm to the people who I'm trying to write this for, I then go and I go to correct myself. So
Yeah.
that's why even when I'm writing Black women, I have sensitivity readers that are also Black women,
Mhm.
multiple, because I want to make sure that I'm not slipping in any implicit bias that I didn't see. I have a blind spot there, right?
Mhm.
So, and I'm not caught myself, not caught myself, not caught myself up in anything really egregious to
Mhm.
date. Um, I want to make sure that I'm not doing that because I don't want to cause
Mhm.
harm, emotional or just narrative harm to someone.
So on the flip side of that, some black readers feel black love, black romance always incorporates struggle love, trauma, um, violence, while others appreciate that because it's a lived experience that they can actually relate to. So, how do you hold space for those type of criticisms, not critiques, but criticisms without allowing yourself to fall into the depths of trying to correct yourself or
Mm-hmm.
correct them?
Right. So when it comes to a criticism like that,
Mm-hmm.
that goes back to me asking better questions of myself or asking different questions of myself. So who benefits from me changing my behavior or my
Mm-hmm.
writing
Mm-hmm.
to cater to that criticism?
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's somebody I don't want to benefit. So like it's the larger societal uh, uh, infrastructure that I am actively not trying to support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of that's part of the litmus test there. But also, it's interesting because dark romance as a broader genre, nobody's making that type of argument about dark romance. They're not saying that all white relationships are violent and whatever, fill in the blank. They're not
Right.
making an argument. It's just like this is the subgenre. you
Right.
know? So when it comes to that one in particular, um, I like I say, I listen to everything because I want to be better than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
But also when it comes to something like that, it's kind of like where is that coming from?
Internalized
Yeah.
shit. That's some stuff. This is something when I hear people say about struggle love, critiquing urban fiction or street lit or black romance in a way that is negative, especially when it comes from black people, because I'll ignore a white person because why do I care? But a black person saying that, I feel like it's a reflection of them. They saw something in those characters that called to them and they just didn't like it because it
Right.
was like a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it. Anytime a black reader, a black reviewer, or anybody DNFs a book based off of those critiques,
Mm-hmm.
it's a reflection of them, not the author or the story or the characters. It is a reflection of them. And actually, I think that means that the author did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. So, what does writing angst and suspense look like on the page for you? Like, is it about pacing, emotional withholding, character wounds, external danger, or is it just completely layered?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely layered. So so taking a step back, the definition of dark romance is either the relationship dynamic between the characters has dark elements, which could
Mm-hmm.
be hate, which could be mismatched power. It runs the gambit. But also, there's a form of dark romance where the world around those characters it contains the darkness, contains the suspense, and that's
Mm-hmm.
the flavor that I write because
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to read I don't want to write about like toxic relationship dynamics for my writing, right? Like I love reading it, and I have a couple of saves that I love that. I love that just being like, I hate y'all together, but how you gonna make this work? So, but that's my flavor of dark romance is
Mm-hmm.
the world around them is dark. And it goes back to I read for fun. I read a lot of like Dan Brown. I read a lot of like suspense. Out the Da Vinci Code was like my jam. The movie because I had a thing for Tom Hanks. I don't know, it was the whole thing.
Really?
I had very weird taste. Okay, I had very weird taste. I was the blurred girl. Okay, so that was very weird taste. But I I liked being able to not know what was coming next. Like it was important for me to hook me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if to hook me, I needed to not be on the edge of my seat throughout the book,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the best way to do that for that I thought and I experienced was in the romantic suspense genre because I could get the romance, which is that there's that happily ever after, which tension is a core facet of romance. If there's no tension, what are we reading? That's not a romance.
But wait a minute, because some of y'all, including you, some of y'all and y'all tension be stressing us out.
Well, here's the secret. That's the whole point.
See, that's some
That's
diabolical bullshit. That right there is diabolical. See,
yes, yes. So no, I want for people to feel my stories. I want for people to feel I want them to feel the emotional weight of the stories,
mm-hmm.
and that's what makes me just gets me in my soul because I feel like I'm connecting with that reader, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
made that reader feel something, even if they want to hit me upside the head with a shoe at the end of the day. At the end of the day.
Lord
So
Jesus.
yeah, and that's also part of the reason why I write cliffhangers. But I do gift y'all by
I
making the
was
book.
gonna get there on that shit, cause what the
No, that's why I write cliffhangers because I want y'all to be like, "What? How the hell are you gonna leave me like this?" But I always this is a brand promise. This is an author promise. I will always release the next book within 4 weeks of the previous one. So you're not gonna be waiting 3 years for the conclusion. You'll get it short.
So we get a short stress out.
Yeah, just a little
Oh
bit,
wow.
just enough to make you like, okay, when's this next book coming?
Wow. So are you a slow burn, fast burn, or in the middle type person? Like why does that pacing, whichever one feels necessary for the kinds of emotional damage your stories tell to us?
So I feel like the higher you go, the harder you fall, right? So if I can
What?
just, yeah, the longer I can get you drawn into this character, so that way when that tension point hits, because again, tension is part and parcel of romance. There's gonna be some type of something, some type of break. When you get
That's
to that,
great.
you feel it. And also I would love to write a faster burn, like I really would, but because I like to write so much emotion, like the emotional parts of it, that's my favorite part to write. It always comes out weird. It comes out
Yeah.
weird. So I just say that's for other people and I recommend my favorite friends who could do that.
Wow. All right. So let's talk about between passion and revenge. I'm gonna start off there. What made you? First of all, what type of research you did for that?
Lots, lots. So the whole premise of the series is that it's inspired by African mythology, African
Yeah,
folklore.
Shango.
Yes, and so I was when I got the concept for it, I was going through my own spiritual journey, and
Mm-hmm.
so I was just really deeply wanting to connect with my roots and
Mm-hmm.
the part of my ancestry that you know didn't have the opportunity to know anything about, and so when I started diving into that and just diving into the mythology around it, which between Passion and Revenge, Shay and Storm's story, I wanted to handle that with a lot of care because
Mm-hmm.
Yoruba is a living religion for for many people practice, and
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted to make sure that I was not being disrespectful or dishonoring to the people who practice that religion,
Mm-hmm.
and so which I note that in the foreword. But I read a ton of books. I was on YouTube watching practitioners. I was pulling out my kids' books to read the other different folklore stories
Mm-hmm.
and just really diving into it. And then what I did was I let it be an inspiration and set it here because I wanted to capture the spirit, the essence of Shango, of Oshun, Oya, and
Mm-hmm.
Oba. That's what I wanted. I didn't want it to be. I didn't even want it to attempt for it to be a literal retelling for various reasons. One, I didn't feel like that was my place to do,
Mm-hmm.
um, and but I wanted to honor the mythology around those characters.
How was it with that dynamic? Because there was a lot of obsession, there was a lot of protection, danger, emotional conflict. What who are these characters beneath the tropes? Like what emotional wounds are really driving the choices they make?
Yeah. So Shay, beneath it all, she is the one who feels the responsibility of forced perfection.
Mhm.
She is not a character who she's very idealistic. She wants what's best for her community and her family first, herself second, which is
Mhm.
something throughout the book as she transitions from being very Oshun and Oba coded, which Oshun, divine feminine, beauty,
Mhm.
sweet waters. Oba was kind of like the the bullied one
Yeah.
in the lives, right? And so as she's trying to navigate her way out of that and turning into Oya, right?
Mhm.
Oya spirit, Oya essence.
Because Oyo is a warrior.
Exactly. And that spiritual match for Shango, right?
Mhm.
And so as she was learning how to break out of that forced perfection and do what she wants to do and
Mhm.
to really recognize the full breadth of her power and how she is just as powerful as Storm is.
Mhm.
And so in the book two, which I don't know if you got the book two. I know that cliffhanger was a little aggressive. So maybe needed a minute. um, so that's them, and then Storm. What I really how I really wanted to write him was I wanted for him to have the space and opportunity to be naive because I
Mhm.
think that there's this expectation that black men have to be strong, right? And I wanted to show a fully rounded male character who is strong physically, emotionally, mentally, but also
Mhm.
who has the space for softness and also opens up the space for the divine feminine that's next to him to be fully present. And that's something that he
Mhm.
learns to get to, right? Through both books. Because protection was like one thing for him at the beginning of the book, but at the end it transforms to be something more balanced between both of them.
So so how do you explore that thin line between devotion and control without glamorizing harm? Because you always get that one line, "I'll burn the world down for you." You know what I'm saying? And as glorious as that is, in fiction, how do you make sure with dark romance that you toe the line but not toe the line so much?
So one of the things that's also important for me when writing those types of dynamics, those like
Mhm.
um, he's a little bit toxic, is that I let there be an acknowledgement of the toxicity in that relationship or in the action. Like there's a repercussion for those actions, right? And so that is a little bit different from not all, but many dark romances, right? Like it's this this abuse is glamorized, and but we should know as readers that it's fiction, which yes, but I actually wrote a Substack about this, about the how we as dark romance writers have a responsibility to our audience to make sure that we are towing that line and we're acknowledging the line. Because there's this conversation where everything under the sun is being lumped under dark romance, as if erotic horror or splatterpunk or any of these other subgenres don't exist. But people put a romance label on it because it's popular, right? It's TikTokable, right? If you say it's a dark romance, but it's really not, because there are specific criteria for dark romance. Primarily, number one, it's romance. So that's the thing that I try to focus on, is making sure that I am acknowledging those gray part, the grayness, the morally gray part of their relationship.
So what does dark romance mean to you creatively? Like, how do you personally make sure your work says or stays emotionally grounded instead of crossing into that pitch black? Now, the pitch black territory is crazy. That one removes agency and humanity point blank, period. So how do you make sure of that?
So one, I personally believe that many of those pitch black titles should not be categorized as dark romance. Because romance is the first and foremost thing. I think that, like I was saying before, there are a lot of authors that are co-opting the dark romance label because it's trendy and it has an ingrained audience, but their work is not dark romance, right? Pitch black is not for everyone. That is 100% for sure. So for me, for dark romance, I prioritize that there's a romance, which there's going to be a happily ever after or a happy for now at the end of that. If there's not that, if somebody dies or somebody's locked up, can't participate in the relationship because whatever reason, that's not dark romance. That's something else, right? And so I that's part number one. Part number two is dark romance. The book has to define which of those paths is going to go down. Meaning, is it going to be the darkness in the dynamic between those characters, or darkness in the world around them, or both, It needs to have a point on that lens, right? Like it needs to be somewhere in that ecosystem. And I also think that the darkness has to be transformative. So it needs to be part of either the plot arc or the character arc, where either the characters, through experiencing this darkness, are transformed, or the storyline progresses and transforms to its end, to that happily for now, happily ever after. Through the
Okay. So let's talk about Shadow Play. The Devil in DC series saga. Um, what psychological themes were you intentional about exploring in Shadow Play?
I really wanted to showcase someone living with mental illness, which is Winter's character. She lives with CPTSD, obsessive compulsive disorder. She has a psychiatric service animal that is with her 24/7, and I wanted to showcase a female main character that you wouldn't really see in mainstream romance or dark romance, because I saw some of those things in myself. So I live with obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm very open about it, about my OCD and my scratchy brain. It's also why I write such intricate stories, because so so I when Winter's character came to me, it came to me that that was who she was going to be, and I didn't want it to be love healed her disability. So at the end of the book, she is still as disabled as she was at the beginning of the book, right? Like she's still living with PTSD, she's still living with those things, she still has her psychiatric service dog, but she is stronger and transformed in other ways. But love did not cure her disorder.
I
And that
like
was
that.
also another thing that was really important for me.
I like
Um,
that. I like that a lot.
yeah. The other thing with the Shadow Play trilogy, with the Devils in DC saga, that this is a mild spoiler, but Hunter is also a survivor of childhood abuse. And I
Mm,
wanted to show both of these characters who both had somewhat similar abuse histories, how that trauma manifested in how they operate as people and how they operate together. And they come to a place of peace with that trauma that they experienced.
mm-hmm.
Mild spoilers. Well, don't want to say that. They come to a place of peace that will be especially peaceful at the beginning of book 2, Oathbreaker. So lots of people will cheer at that moment of peace, when somebody gets their just desserts, somebody bad. Um, but yeah, I wanted to explore that angle as well.
You talked about how her love relationship did not heal her. She is a survivor who helps others heal,
Yeah.
but struggles to live fully in herself. Why was it important for you to tell a story where healing isn't linear and love doesn't magically fix everything?
Yeah. So I wanted to show that imperfect people can still be just as much of a light and just as much of a support for
Mm,
other people who are also seeking healing. And
mm,
one of the things that I've learned is that, like you said, healing isn't linear. Also, healing isn't a destination, right? Like it's not a like you don't. I don't think that you get to a point where you're like, oh well, I'm healed. I think that with trauma and things like that, I think that you get to a point where you're able to live with it and
mm-hmm,
you're able to put it acknowledge that it's there, but it doesn't become the thing that controls your life. And so
mm,
I wanted to show her moving through that as well.
yeah,
Because at the beginning of Shadow Play, she's living, but she's not really thriving. Like she's not really um, allowing herself to start just experiencing things, right? Because she
yeah,
dealt with a lot of agoraphobia that prior to the book start, she was really working on to be able to go outside and go live.
yeah.
And that's also the other part of it, right? That she was working on herself and getting better, and by her standards, way before she met Hunter Brigham.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like I met this guy, now I got to go change myself. Like that. No, yeah.
Mm.
so, um, so yeah. Anyway, that long
But
story
you
short.
also have how power appears everywhere in the book. Like power appears everywhere in the book, wealth, influence, um, secrecy, trauma. How do you interrogate power in your romances rather than just using it as an aesthetic?
Mm. I like how you worded that, using it as an aesthetic.
Yeah.
I so the thesis of the Devils in DC saga is what is power, right?
Mm,
And who really wields it. And I think that it's a very timely conversation that we're having now
yes.
about, as we look at the world around us and then determines like who's the last line of defense, who really has the power here. It's
Yeah.
the people. Yeah. And I wanted to present what people would traditionally see as power.
Mhm.
You have billionaires, you have millionaires, you have the DC backdrop of our government, right?
Mm.
Um, but what does that, is that actually power? What does that actually look like? What does it mean? You know, and how can we, how can the people who are powerless, right, who are considered to be powerless,
Mm,
actually show how powerful that they actually are?
yeah, I like that because I always say that, and I just believe this in my core that fiction has a place in realism,
Yeah.
and realism has a place in fiction, and they both coincide with each other. And I just think that when you think of stories, you do have your escapism, but it's that nugget of realism in it that really makes you think about situations at its core. And maybe it's just me because I like to overanalyze every goddamn thing, but it's just, I just think that with stories like that, dark romance or even suspense or intrigue, there's this nugget of realism that just tickles the back of your head like, yeah, if I looked at the White House right now, this is the type of shit we're going through right now.
Listen.
So yeah. So that
We're
I
telling
can
these stories.
appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you, and it's actually been a point of like tension within how I'm crafting my catalog, right? Like the books that I'm writing, because I can't write books without a focus on that. And I don't really want to. Like I want for there to be something there for everybody who wants to read it. Like if somebody wants to read it and they're there for the spice, because they get down and dirty,
Mm,
all around, everywhere, right? So if somebody wants to read it for the spice, they can get that and they can enjoy that. If somebody wants to read it for a beautiful love story at the end of the day, they can get that. If somebody
mm,
wants to read it for these things that I try to seed, like which is present in Shadowplay, but also in Between Passion and Revenge, because if you do a close reading of Between Passion and Revenge, you see a lot of like symbolism and nuggets and things like that, which I get so excited when readers email me and they're like, "Did you mean to do this?" I was like, "Yes, I did, and you got it." So, so yeah, I think that I try to write a book so that the people who find it can enjoy it for whatever they want to enjoy it for.
mm.
But I also write them for my artistic and creative needs, which is to write those stories that ask different questions.
I can get that. So how do you balance the emotional intimacy with suspense pacing so neither is sacrificed? Because this is more from a dual POV, and it has like that slow burn pacing, but the emotional tension is really built into the story. So how do you do that without sacrificing your art?
Mm. So, okay, this is going to be the most uninteresting answer. But I have studied craft a lot,
Mm,
and I'm always studying craft because I
mm.
love learning. It's why I'm a perpetual student. I don't know. I can't be the only one who every 6 months wakes up and is like, maybe I should get a PhD random. You know, like
We get addicted to them damn things.
degree. I said, I won't be back at school. But I I've created I've looked at the different ways that people write, because genre fiction is formula, right? Like there's a formula as to how this thing is supposed to go. And I am like, okay, I know the rules. How can I break them? And how can I change them? How can I transform them? How can I be Angel M. Shaw, right? And put
Mm.
that. And so the answer to your question is I have studied a lot, and I try to break the rules as much as I can, and somehow it ends up where it ends up.
So with that, now you got my brain tingling. So with that, how does one break the rules that people like Edgar Allan Poe, because that's a dark gothic romance, people don't realize it, but that's what it is. How do you break those norms to
Exactly.
become Angel Shaw?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, first, acknowledging Kenya's comment about having a PhD combo with Lakeith. Oh my God. Tell her I said hey, by the way. Um, that is that is very interesting. Like, so what I don't even know how to answer that question.
It just wait because when you were saying the blueprint, and when I
Yeah.
think of dark, I think of Edgar Allan Poe. I think of even Frankenstein, the Count of Monte Cristo, the Man in the Iron Mask. I think of those things, right? And I'm just like, those are usually the blueprints that everybody goes by, even though they are classics, they still follow somewhat of that guideline.
Yeah.
So how do you break those guidelines and step outside of that societal norm of writing?
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people, when they study craft, right, they're looking at
Mhm,
craft. They're looking at how do I make compelling characters? How do I make an engaging plot? And
mhm,
I look at all those things, and
mhm,
that's definitely focused on that. But also, I'm thinking about things like what atmosphere do I want people to feel when they are reading my books, right? So you mentioned Edgar Allan Poe,
mhm.
fantastic example. Like The Raven was my jam for like
Mine
45
too.
minutes. So, but if you think about Poe's writing, it's atmospheric, right? You
Mhm,
start reading it and you feel fog, you feel darkness,
mhm,
and I my challenge, the thing that I'm actively working on is I want people to be dropped into the story, so atmosphere, but I don't want them to just stay in one type of feeling. I want them to be able to elevate up in the funny moments. So like in Shadowplay, when Veronica is trying to figure out why the hell Winter is freaking out, and it's because she just kissed her boss up against the tree, and they have this back and forth that's just like comedic. I want for them there to be enough space for that to feel just as aligned in the story as the
mhm.
moment where they're having a breakup, or that or whatever type of deeper moment, right? So for me, it's about atmosphere. Like, I'm trying to get people to feel like they're in this story
Mhm.
in a tangible way. So
I like that. I like that. I like that. I never thought of it like that. Honestly, you get so you get so engrossed in a story. A really good story will literally have you playing the movie in your head. And so now I have the word for it. Thank you. Thank you
yeah.
very much.
Well, and if you think about it, even going further back, right? Like African storytelling, the griots are storytellers, right? Griots are
Yeah.
storytellers. They were telling you stories around campfires or in their homes, and they were painting a picture with their words that made you feel a specific way, right? They guided you through the picture that they were painting to a specific moral, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think that it's really elemental to writing, and I think that in the conversations around genre fiction, right, where we focus so much on, okay, what is the structure of a romance novel, that
Mhm.
there is still space for that type of writing as well, and for that type of focus.
I think you also described like a Zora Neale Hurston or a James Baldwin. Their writing like kind of tuck you there. A Alice Walker. So I like that. I do. But I want to ask you this because I said I was going to ask you this. Do you enjoy using cliffhangers? Um, how do you know when a story needs emotional closure versus when tension should carry into the next book?
Yeah, yeah. So this is actually my challenge for 2026, is that I'm going to write interconnected standalone books. So they'll be in the same world, but you'll be able to read that book and have that emotional closure. So that is the challenge that I'm presenting to myself for 2026.
Are you
However,
sure? Are you
yeah,
sure?
Yes. However, it's just I want y'all to feel something. I want y'all to be heated. So I know the best way is to just leave y'all with a cliffhanger that's like you hanging on by your fingernails. So,
Oh, I'm dead.
but I'm trying a different tack. I'm trying to change up my strategy.
I don't know. I feel like no, I feel like you still going I just I don't know, something in my Shango is telling me that you still gonna have me fucked up. I I
Yeah.
I don't know.
There might be a very aggressive, like, oh my god, what's going to happen to that secondary character in the next book? I can't promise you I'm not going to do that, but for the main characters in the book you were reading in your hands at that current time in place, there will have resolution.
Right. We
I'm
gonna
not.
see.
I'm on this.
So let me ask you this. So why as a black woman, do you feel that your characters, your female main characters, deserve and are allowed to have softness, complexity, anger, contradiction, desire? Why is that representation necessary?
Ooh, because it's a revolutionary act.
Mm,
Anytime a black woman is able to be dynamic, live in that space of being multifaceted, to have wants and needs and desires and dislikes, and allowed to be a full human,
mm,
that is a revolutionary act. Because
yeah.
for generations, that has been something that has been actively attacked.
Mm,
Actively.
yeah.
So yeah, that's my main thing. I love us. I love black women, right? And I want to showcase us in our many, many forms. That's why I
Mm,
also write interracial, multicultural, and also black romance, because I think
mm,
that love and support can come from many places as well.
mm.
So, yeah.
The literary industry is difficult for black authors, to say it mildly. And marketing has become almost mandatory compared to back in the day. Um, how do you feel the internet has shifted the goalposts for success? And why is visibility outside of newsletters so critical now?
Yeah. I mean, it's a noisy world. It's a noisy world. People are consuming at a unprecedented rate all kinds of
Mm,
media, right? And with the machine that we have now, right? You have TikTok, Instagram, Reels, the short form kind of ways of existing.
mm,
We It's hard to break into that, right? It's like if you got like a raging river and you're trying to cross it, that's very, very difficult to get across, you know?
yeah,
Um,
that's true.
so you build up your tools, right? Like you build up the scaffolding to be able to support you in this very noisy, aggressive market.
Yeah.
And um, I didn't even try to query because I always knew I wanted to be indie. Um, Not to say that there's not a universe in which I might try to go trad, but I'd always be indie, right?
Mm,
I'd both be hybrid. Um, and that is because I have noticed that the publishing industry, uh, which I worked in my past life, so in my before days, because I had a whole career before this, um, it too has a formula and a framework, and I am not one who does well being boxed in.
mm,
So, like I said, getting that scaffolding for your own platform. How are you going to show up? Which does not mean you have to be everywhere, right? I don't believe that authors have to be, you know, 17 TikToks, all the Instagram accounts, and a
yeah.
Substack. You know, like I think that there are ways to build an easeful career, and it's imbalanced, and I mean we're you know pushed behind the starting line, but like I said, we acknowledge that it's there and we keep running anyway.
Yeah. So if this is gonna be a two part, well, I'm a interracial side, black love side. Okay. So if you were standing on a global stage representing interracial romance written by black women across both traditional and indie spaces, what would you want the world to understand about this work and how important it is?
Mm. I would want the world to understand, if we're looking at interracial romance with a black female main character, which is the majority. Um, I would want them to know that that is the axis from which the rest of the story unfolds. For me, it's the black women are the center, right? And so looking at how love unfolds around that is what I would want people to understand. And that goes for my black romance as well. I'm
So,
very much a feminist, so I'm just, I'm a womanist actually. So,
so if you could stand in front of the USA Today, and the New York Times best-selling list, and you had the mic, and you were representing black romance written by black people
mm-hmm.
across both traditional and indie, what would you want those lists, those movers and shakers that handle that list, to understand the importance of diversity, equity, and equality?
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that is a loaded ass question, Storm.
Hey, they don't call me
That's
the hood intellect for nothing.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one though. You know, I think that I would want them to know that even though the misconception amongst their circles is that black people don't buy books and
Mm-hmm.
that we don't, there's not a market there, I would want them to know that they are 1,000% wrong. It'd be difficult for that particular situation, right? This is me and my literal brain. It'd be very difficult for me to not be like, let me show you all this amazingness. But I get a little New Orleans about that. So,
Yeah. So what advice would you give to both new authors and seasoned authors about protecting their mental health while still building a sustainable career?
mm, mm. One is focus on why you're doing this, right? I think that there's too much emphasis placed upon authors to write to market, right? Like there's this emphasis on you got to hit the right tropes, you got to hit the right type of NMC, you got to have those TikTokable moments in your book and lines in your book, and I think that takes precedence over just like crafting a good story. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if there are the tropes and the right lines. If it's not a good story, readers aren't going to stay for it, right? Or at the very minimum, they're not going to come back to you, right? And so I think that it's important to focus on how can you write the best story that can be told for this book, and keeping that at the forefront because the rest of it can come around it. There's a market for every book.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like I think people think, oh, you didn't hit the right trope, so it's not marketable. Everything is marketable. There are more readers out there that could ever buy our books.
Yeah.
There are more readers out there than any of us would need to have fantastic, abundant, audacious lives.
Yeah.
So write the book that you are supposed to write, the good book you're supposed to write first.
So, where can readers purchase your books?
So you readers can purchase my books. I'm in Kindle Unlimited, so they can borrow my books for free through the KU library or through the actual public library. All of my books are now available through the U.S. public library system. So if you don't want to support the Zon, you can request my books at your library. So that is a new change that Amazon allowed us to do, and so I am leveraging it to get people to go to their libraries because we need those. We need those.
That's news to me. I'm glad you said that. I'm gonna have to do some research into that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
new. It's like October or so. So
mm.
yeah.
So, what book events will you be attending this year, or if any?
Oh man, I'm still finalizing my plans for this year. I have a pretty big international trip coming up, so I'm trying to decide what the world will look like for me after that. But if and when Black Book Bash / Kinfolk Lit comes back around, I will be there with bells on. So if you see
Okay.
that there, I'm be there.
Okay. So, what are your social media handles so people can stay connected with you?
Yes. So everywhere on all the channels, I am Angel M Shaw _right.
Mhm.
So you can find me on TikTok. You can find me on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all the places.
Okay. So, I'm gonna do your outro. I got two announcements, and then I'm gonna let you go. All right. So, Angel, thank you for trusting me with your voice, your process, and your truth tonight. What you offered readers goes beyond romance. It's an emotional realism, it's complicated humanity, it's desire without shame, it's trauma without spectacle, and it's love without apologizing. Um, your work reminds us that Black women are allowed full emotional landscapes, messy, intense, vulnerable, powerful, conflicted, healing, sensual, and real. If you guys down here and those who will see this on YouTube want a good book, follow Angel M. Shaw, support her work, leave reviews, because that is important, y'all, and show up for her in the way we want authors to show up for us. So, as I always say, stay loved, stay loud, and stay Black on motherfucking purpose.
Mm-hmm.